In a quiet little town, surrounded by lush green hills and thick forests, there lived a boy who had a secret world of his own. This boy wasn't like the others in his neighborhood. While most kids spent their afternoons playing cricket or climbing trees, he preferred to stay indoors, sitting beside an old piano that stood in the corner of his family's living room. The piano wasn't anything fancy. It was worn out with chipped paint and a few keys that stuck when pressed, but to him, it was magical. It was his escape, his companion, and his way of expressing everything he couldn't put into words. From a very young age, this boy found comfort in music. His mother, who used to teach music before she became a homemaker, introduced him to the basics. She showed him how to place his fingers on the keys and encouraged him to experiment with sounds. But what started as simple lessons quickly turned into something much deeper. He would sit for hours, letting his hands wander across the keyboard, creating tunes that seemed to flow straight from his heart. Sometimes the melodies were cheerful, like the giggles of children running through fields. Other times, they were soft and melancholic, mirroring the gray skies on rainy days. The boy didn't realize it then, but those early sessions at the piano were shaping him in ways he couldn't imagine. Every time he played, he poured a piece of himself into the music, his joys, fears, hopes, and even his loneliness. There was something about the way the notes lingered in the air that made him feel understood, as if the piano could listen and respond in its own silent way. On days when life felt overwhelming, the music gave him a sense of calm. And on days when happiness bubbled inside him, the piano helped him share that joy with the world, even if no one else was around to hear it. What made these moments even more special was how they connected him to his surroundings. When sunlight streamed through the window, casting golden beams onto the wooden floor, his fingers danced over the keys, creating bright, lively tunes. And when storms rolled in, filling the sky with thunderclouds, his music grew softer, almost whisper-like, matching the rhythm of the raindrops tapping against the glass panes. In those hours, the boy wasn't just playing music. He was telling stories without uttering a single word. Little did he know, these humble beginnings were laying the foundation for something extraordinary. Those simple melodies born out of curiosity and emotion would one day evolve into powerful compositions that touched countless lives. But for now, all he knew was that the piano was his safe haven, a place where he could be himself, free from judgment or expectation. And perhaps that was enough. Isco Expand Crow without heading 400 words mine simple English words. Part 2, it should be interesting, and every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also don't create violated content which can affect YouTube policy. Also don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. As the boy grew older, his connection with the piano only deepened. What started as a hobby soon became a passion that consumed much of his time. He wasn't just content with playing simple tunes anymore. He wanted to explore the vast world of music beyond what he already knew. One day, while rummaging through the shelves of his school library, he stumbled upon a CD tucked away in a dusty corner. The cover showed a man sitting at a grand piano against a backdrop of snowy mountains. Intrigued, he borrowed it and took it home. That evening, as the house grew quiet, he popped the CD into an old player and pressed play. The first notes that filled the room were soft and gentle, almost like a whisper. But as the piece progressed, it swelled into something breathtakingly beautiful. Layers of melody intertwined with emotion, so raw it felt like the music was speaking directly to him. It was Nuvola Bianca by Ludovico Einaudi, though he didn't know the name then. All he knew was that this piece made his heart ache and soar at the same time. For the first time, he realized music could do more than entertain. It could tell stories, evoke memories, and stir feelings buried deep within. Inspired, the boy began experimenting with his own compositions. He tried to mimic the complexity of what he'd heard, but quickly learned that copying wasn't enough. Instead, he focused on channeling his own emotions into his music. Every note he played carried a piece of his life, his happiness, his struggles, his dreams. Slowly, his melodies started taking shape, becoming richer and more expressive. His parents noticed the change too. They often found themselves stopping whatever they were doing just to listen, amazed by how their son's music seemed to capture moments they hadn't even realized mattered until they heard them reflected in his songs. The turning point came during his high school talent show. Encouraged by his friends, he decided to perform one of his original pieces. Backstage, his hands trembled, not from nervousness but from excitement. As he walked onto the stage, the spotlight shining down on him, he felt a strange mix of fear and determination. When he placed his fingers on the keys and began to play, the entire room fell silent. His music wasn't flashy or loud, but it didn't need to be. It spoke directly to the hearts of everyone listening, wrapping them in waves of nostalgia and emotion. By the end of the performance, the audience erupted into applause, some even wiping away tears. That night changed everything for him. People who had barely noticed him before now approached him, eager to talk about his music. Teachers praised his creativity, and classmates asked if he could teach them how to play. For the first time, he felt seen, not for his grades or his looks, but for who he truly was. More importantly, he understood that his gift wasn't just for himself. Music had the power to connect people, to remind them of shared experiences and emotions they might have forgotten. And with that realization, he vowed to keep pushing himself, to see just how far his music could take him. Isco expand crow without heading 400 words in simple English words, part 3. It should be interesting, and every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also don't create violated content, which can affect YouTube policy. Also don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. Life, however, wasn't always kind to the boy. Just as he was starting to find his footing and confidence in his music, a storm hit his personal world, one that no melody could easily soothe. During his final year of high school, his parents' marriage fell apart. The arguments that had once been muffled behind closed doors grew louder and more frequent, until one day they announced their decision to separate. For anyone, this would have been a heavy blow, but for him, it felt like the ground beneath his feet had crumbled. The house that was once filled with warmth now felt cold and empty. His father moved out, leaving long silences in his wake. His mother tried her best to stay strong, but he could see the sadness etched on her face. In those moments, the piano became his refuge more than ever. Late at night, when the weight of everything felt unbearable, he'd sit at the keys and let his emotions flow into the music. Sometimes, it was angry and chaotic, the notes clashing against each other like waves crashing during a storm. Other times, it was soft and mournful, almost like a cry for help. Each piece he created during this time carried fragments of his pain, confusion, and hope for better days. But not everyone understood his way of coping. At school, some kids teased him for being too sensitive. They didn't get why he spent so much time playing the piano when others were out having fun. A few even mocked his dream of becoming a musician, saying it wasn't a real job and that he should focus on something more practical. Their words stung, but deep down, he knew they weren't worth listening to. Music wasn't just a hobby for him. It was how he made sense of the world, how he healed, and how he connected with people. Still, their criticism planted seeds of doubt in his mind. Was he wasting his time? Would anyone ever truly appreciate what he had to offer? Despite these challenges, he refused to give up. He reminded himself of the applause he'd received at the talent show, of the way his music had touched people's hearts. Those moments proved that his gift mattered, even if not everyone saw it. So, he kept practicing, pouring every ounce of his energy into improving. On weekends, he began performing at small local events, community gatherings, church programs, and school functions. These gigs weren't glamorous, but they gave him a chance to share his music with others and remind himself why he loved it so much. One evening, after a particularly tough day, he sat at the piano and composed a new piece. It started slow and somber, reflecting the heaviness in his heart, but gradually, it shifted into something brighter, almost hopeful. As the final note faded, he realized something important. Life might throw storms his way, but music gave him the power to weather them. That realization became a turning point. From then on, he stopped letting doubts and negativity hold him back. Instead, he focused on honing his craft, knowing that every challenge he faced only added depth to his art. Though the road ahead was uncertain, he held onto one truth. Music had saved him when nothing else could. And maybe, just maybe, it could do the same for someone else too. Isco expand crow without heading 400 words Mayan simple English words. Part 4. It should be interesting, and every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI-generated. Also don't create violated content, which can affect YouTube policy. Also don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. After high school, the young musician decided to take a bold step. He packed his bags and moved to the city to study music composition at a renowned college. It was a big leap, from the quiet comfort of a small town to the bustling chaos of urban life. But he knew it was where he needed to be. The city was alive with sounds. Honking cars, chatter on the streets, the rhythmic hum of trains passing by. At first, it all felt overwhelming, but soon he realized that this cacophony of noise held endless inspiration. Every sound told a story, and he wanted to capture those stories in his music. College introduced him to a whole new world. He met other musicians who were just as passionate as he was, each bringing their own unique style to the table. Some played instruments he had never seen before, while others experimented with genres he hadn't even heard of. Together, they exchanged ideas, challenged one another, and pushed boundaries. In class, he learned about the technical aspects of composing, how to structure a piece, how to layer melodies, and how to evoke specific emotions through harmony and rhythm. But beyond the theory, he discovered something more profound. Music wasn't just about creating beautiful sounds. It was about understanding people and the moments that defined their lives. His first real test came when a friend asked him to perform at her wedding. Nervous but excited, he agreed. On the day of the event, as he sat at the piano during the ceremony, he watched the couple exchange vows. There was so much love and emotion in the room. It was almost tangible. Inspired, he began to play, weaving together soft, tender notes that seemed to wrap around everyone like a warm embrace. As the bride and groom kissed, he improvised a gentle melody that mirrored the joy in their eyes. When the song ended, the entire room erupted into applause. Later, his friend hugged him tightly and said, "Your music made our moment unforgettable." That experience opened doors he hadn't imagined. Word spread about his ability to create music that resonated deeply with people, and soon he was getting requests for all kinds of events: birthdays, anniversaries, art exhibitions, even memorial services. Each occasion taught him something new about human emotions. At a funeral for a young child, he composed a lullaby-like piece that brought tears to the eyes of grieving parents. At a gallery opening, he played an upbeat tune that energized the crowd and set the perfect mood. He realized that every moment in life carried its own rhythm, and his job was to find it and bring it to life through his music. But it wasn't always easy. Sometimes the pressure to deliver something meaningful weighed heavily on him. There were days when self-doubt crept in, making him question whether he was truly cut out for this path. Yet every time he saw the impact his music had on others, the smiles, the tears, the way it brought people closer together, he reminded himself why he started in the first place. Music wasn't just his passion, it was his purpose. And with each performance, he grew more confident in his ability to turn ordinary moments into extraordinary memories. Through these experiences, he came to understand that music wasn't confined to concert halls or grand stages. It lived in the everyday moments of life, in laughter, in tears, in silence. And he vowed to keep exploring those moments, one note at a time. Isco expand crow without heading 400 words my in simple English words. Part 5. It should be interesting and every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also don't create violated content, which can affect YouTube policy. Also don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. One day, while performing at a cozy little cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, something unexpected happened. It was a typical afternoon. Soft chatter filled the air, the smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered, and sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden patterns on the wooden floor. He sat at the piano near the entrance, playing a mix of his original compositions and familiar tunes. People came and went, some stopping to listen for a moment before heading out, others settling down with their drinks, enjoying the music as background ambience. As he played, he noticed a man sitting alone at a table nearby. The man seemed lost in thought, occasionally glancing toward the piano, but mostly staring into his cup of coffee. There was something about him, a quiet intensity, that caught the musician's attention. After finishing a soulful piece, he decided to try something new. He began improvising a melody, letting his fingers wander across the keys, weaving together notes that felt raw and honest. It wasn't planned or polished, just pure emotion translated into sound. When the last note faded, the room fell silent for a brief moment before breaking into applause. The man at the table stood up and walked over to him. "That was incredible," the stranger said, his voice tinged with admiration. "I'm a filmmaker, and I've been looking for someone who can create a score like that for my next project. Would you be interested?" At first, the young musician thought it might be a joke. A filmmaker? Interested in his music? But the sincerity in the man's eyes told him this was real. Overwhelmed, but excited, he agreed to hear more. They spent hours talking about the movie, a story about love, loss, and redemption, and how music could elevate its emotional impact. By the end of the conversation, he knew this was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. For the next few months, he threw himself into the project. Scoring a film was nothing like anything he'd done before. It required precision, patience, and an ability to adapt to scenes that shifted between joy, tension, and heartbreak. Some nights, he stayed up late, replaying clips of the movie on his laptop, trying to find the perfect melody to match the character's emotions. Other days, frustration got the better of him. He'd scrap entire pieces only to start over from scratch. But through it all, he reminded himself of why he was doing this, to tell a story that would touch people's hearts. Finally, after countless revisions and sleepless nights, the soundtrack was complete. When the film premiered at a prestigious festival, he sat in the audience, gripping the armrests of his seat, unsure of what to expect. As the opening scene unfolded, accompanied by one of his compositions, he felt a lump rise in his throat. The music wasn't just background noise. It was breathing life into every frame, amplifying the emotions of the characters and drawing the audience deeper into the story. By the time the credits rolled, the theater erupted into applause. Critics praised the film, calling it a masterpiece, and singled out the score as its emotional backbone. Suddenly, the young musician found himself thrust into the spotlight. Interviews, offers, and invitations poured in, but none of that compared to the satisfaction of knowing his music had made a difference. For the first time, he truly understood the power of his gift, not just to entertain, but to move people, to make them feel seen and understood. And yet, despite the newfound recognition, he remained grounded. This was only the beginning, he told himself. There are still so many stories waiting to be told, so many moments yearning to be captured in melody. With each note he played, he was building bridges between hearts. And that, to him, was the greatest reward of all. Isco expand crow without heading 400 words my in simple English words. Part 6. It should be interesting and every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also don't create violated content, which can affect YouTube policy. Also, don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. With success came opportunities that the young musician had once only dreamed of. He was now in demand, not just for his talent, but for the way he understood the emotional depth of music. Directors wanted him to score their films. Event organizers begged him to perform at prestigious venues, and even brands approached him to create jingles for their campaigns. But instead of letting fame go to his head, he chose to use his platform to give back. He realized that music wasn't just about personal achievement. It was a gift meant to be shared. One of the first things he did was start hosting workshops for aspiring musicians. These weren't your typical classes where people learned scales or how to read sheet music. Instead, he focused on teaching them how to connect with their emotions and translate those feelings into sound. Music isn't about perfection, he'd tell them. It's about honesty. If you can make someone feel something, then you've done your job. His students were amazed by how relatable and down-to-earth he was. Many of them had been told they weren't good enough or that their style didn't fit the mold. But here was someone who believed in the beauty of individuality. Under his guidance, they began to find confidence in their own voices. But he didn't stop there. Growing up, he remembered how much the old upright piano in his living room had meant to him. The way it became a safe space when life felt overwhelming. Not everyone had access to such a luxury, and he wanted to change that. So he founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing pianos to underserved communities. The idea was simple: place pianos in public spaces like parks, community centers, and schools, so anyone could experience the joy of making music. He called it Keys to Connection. The project took off faster than he expected. Donations poured in from people inspired by his mission, and soon, pianos started appearing in neighborhoods across the city. Kids who had never touched an instrument before gathered around, tentatively pressing keys and laughing as they discovered new sounds. Adults stopped to play nostalgic tunes, reminiscing about their younger days. Even strangers bonded over impromptu duets. It was proof of what he had always believed, that music had the power to bring people together. He also made it a point to visit these communities regularly, sitting at the pianos himself and playing alongside locals. During one such visit, he met a young girl who reminded him of himself at her age. She was shy and hesitant, but clearly drawn to the piano. Over time, he encouraged her to keep practicing, even gifting her a beginner's book of sheet music. Watching her grow more confident each week filled him with pride. It was like seeing a reflection of his own journey. Through all of this, he discovered something profound. His true purpose wasn't just to create music, but to inspire others to do the same. Every workshop he taught, every piano he donated, and every person he encouraged added another layer to his legacy. Fame and accolades were nice, but they paled in comparison to the fulfillment he felt knowing he was helping others unlock their potential. Music wasn't just his story anymore. It belonged to everyone brave enough to let it speak through them. And yet, despite everything he had achieved, he remained humble. Success hadn't changed him. If anything, it had deepened his gratitude. He knew there was still so much work to be done, so many lives to touch. With every note he played and every heart he inspired, he moved closer to his ultimate goal, ensuring that no one ever felt alone, because music would always be there to listen and to heal. Isco Expand Crow without heading 400 words mine simple English words. Part 7. It should be interesting and every part should be engaging so the audience doesn't get bored. Also keep the wording simple and natural tone. Also make the script human-centric and don't give feel of AI generated. Also don't create violated content, which can affect YouTube policy. Also don't use names like Marcus, Sarah, Emma, Jamal, etc. Years passed, and a young musician who once played alone in a quiet living room found himself standing on stage in front of a packed concert hall. The grand piano gleamed under the spotlight as he adjusted the microphone and took a deep breath. This wasn't just any performance. It was a celebration of his journey, a retrospective of all the moments that had shaped him into the person he was today. As he glanced at the sea of faces before him, he felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Each person in the audience carried their own stories, struggles, and triumphs. And tonight, he hoped to touch their hearts with his music. He began with a piece inspired by his childhood, the simple melodies he used to play on that old upright piano. The notes were gentle, almost hesitant, like the first steps of someone discovering the world. Slowly, the music grew richer, mirroring the ups and downs of his life. There were sections filled with turbulence, reflecting the storms he'd weathered, and softer passages that spoke of hope and healing. Every note carried fragments of his past, but they also resonated with universal emotions: love, loss, resilience, and joy. He poured his soul into the performance, letting the music do the talking. As the final piece approached, he paused for a moment, looking out at the crowd. "This last song," he said softly, "is for everyone here tonight. It's called Moments." With that, he placed his hands on the keys and began to play. The melody started off soft and reflective, almost like a whisper, then swelled into something powerful and uplifting. It was a tribute to every experience that had brought him here: the laughter, the tears, the challenges, and the triumphs. But more than anything, it was a thank you to his family, his mentors, his friends, and even the strangers whose lives had intersected with his own. When the final note faded, the room fell silent for a heartbeat before erupting into thunderous applause. People rose to their feet, cheering and wiping away tears. For many, it wasn't just a concert. It was an emotional journey they hadn't expected. As he bowed, he felt a deep sense of peace. This was what he had always wanted: not fame or recognition, but the ability to connect with people through his music. After the show, fans lined up to meet him, sharing how his compositions had touched their lives. One woman told him she listened to his music during chemotherapy, finding strength in its soothing tones. A teenager said his pieces inspired her to pick up the piano again after years of giving up. An elderly man shook his hand, saying the concert reminded him of his late wife and the songs they used to dance to. These stories stayed with him long after the night ended, reinforcing why he had chosen this path in the first place. In the years that followed, he continued to compose, perform, and teach, leaving behind a legacy that went beyond awards and accolades. His music became timeless, weaving itself into the fabric of people's lives. Whether it was played at weddings, funerals, or quiet evenings at home, it served as a reminder of the beauty and fragility of human existence. And so, the boy who once sought solace in a corner of his childhood home grew into a man whose melodies reached far beyond what he could have imagined. His story wasn't just about talent or hard work. It was about connection, empathy, and the belief that music could heal and unite. Through his gift, he showed the world that life's most meaningful moments deserved a soundtrack, one that celebrated both the light and the shadows. And in doing so, he ensured that his legacy would live on, not just in the notes he left behind, but in the hearts he touched along the way.